more than 15 years, right?
2004? Yeah.
Whatever. So, yeah, I've known Anthi for many years, since the university years. What I always remember from Anthi is that she was always smiling, she was always happy, and she had this red t-shirt that said, "I need holidays," like all year round, basically, at every occasion. She grew to become a very clever security professional, because she managed, and we've worked with Anthi in the past, and we've done some on-site work for various companies around the world. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun time. She's an actual redhead hacker. So please, an applause for Anthi. She's really good at what she does.
Thanks, Greg. Hi guys. Before I start, is there anybody here today named Adam? No Adams. Okay, you missed out on some treats. Anyway, right, so Greg gave me a call a couple of weeks ago to ask me did I want to come and present a talk here. And I was a little bit apprehensive because I'm moving houses and I'm moving cities. I'm trying to sell my house in Dublin. I'm trying to find a new house in Cork. I'm also working full time. I volunteered a few things. So I was like, I don't really know what's really involved. And he says, well, it's a 4 to 5 minute talk. And I was like, gosh, just, lightning talk grant, I can fit that in, no problem. About to board my flight to come in today from Dublin, having a catch up with Greg. I was like, how are you doing with that 4 to 5 minute talk? I was like, sorry, was it 45 minute talk, not 4 to 5 minute talk? So I'll be done very quickly here. Feel free to get some drinks when I'm done. Right, so I mentioned to my boss, who kindly gave me the day off to come here, and he said, because I was like 45 minutes, what am I going to say? What can I talk about for 45 minutes? And I was like, ever since you started talking here, you chew my ear off for 8 hours a day. You can manage 45 minutes. He said that basically since I joined Logitech and started sitting beside him, he's been going gradually deaf on the right ear. So I think he means I talk a lot. I'm not sure. We'll find out. We'll fill the time anyway. Okay, so I'm Anthi. As I said, I work at Logitech. And, who am I? What do I do? Right, so this is me. Who knows what I want here? What sport is this? Is there anybody who knows what this is?
Volleyball. Trophy holding.
Volleyball, there you go. Well done. Beach volleyball. Now, my partner had actually gone behind some sand dunes to relieve herself. That's why she's not in the photo. I played beach volleyball, and yes, I live in Ireland. It's a wet country. What am I doing? Playing beach volleyball there. Well, you can do it everywhere. The only difference between me and a beach volleyball player in the rest of Europe is that I go to tournaments with my raincoat and my tent, and that's it. This is my indoor volleyball team. A great bunch of girls. If anybody wants their numbers, just come see me after class. Yeah. These are my dogs. I love dogs. It's one of the things that divide me. I prefer them to most people. On the left we have Lizzie. She's one of my 2 girls, and Steffi. And this is Finn. Finn was supposed to be a temporary Christmas foster. He is now a Gilligan, and he's been living in my house for the last 8 months. Okay, so this is things that I really like. I mentioned I volunteer a few places, so what else do I do? Security Bsides, Greg mentioned there, Security Bsides Cape Town. Has anybody, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Security Bsides events. Security Bsides Athens, has anybody been there? Yes? Okay, so I'm one of the organizers, the main man being Greg right there. So great event. If you get an opportunity, do go. Athens is a nice place, particularly hot around the time of the year that the event is held, but it's Greece in the summer, what you going to do? If you're not doing really well in heat, new alternative coming up, Bsides Dublin. I'm the main organizer of the event, and we're just setting it up right now, the inaugural conference being on or around the 23rd of March next year, pending confirmation of the venue. Watch this space if you want to hear more about Security Bsides Athens or Dublin. Again, come talk to me after. Right, so, you know, this is things that I like to do. I obviously need money to sustain myself and being able to do the things that I like, so what do I do for a living? Right now, I'm an AppSec engineer at Logitech. As I said, I've been causing deafness to my boss, but he's happy enough for me to still be there, so I'm doing something right. Before that, I was a principal security architect for Bank of Ireland. I was there for a number of years, and I was leading a really big digital transformation program. At the time it was running. It was the largest of its kind of Europe. It's still going on, so I'm not sure was it because I did something right or I did something wrong, but you know, the bank is still there and still working, so it's all good. Before that, I was doing some pen testing, I was doing some sysadmin, I was doing a lot of things. My background is in computer security, and it is where I met Greg when we were at the same university at the same time. And okay, why am I here? What do I have to say to you? Okay, so these look familiar, I'm sure. Nice logos, really cool names, and these used to be an attribute of malware in the past. The really cool logos, the cool names. You had, you know, your poodle now. You know, the rise of the celebrity vulnerability now. You have poodle, you have heartbleed, you have stage fright. You know, it's all up and coming. It's been making headlines, security headlines, but headlines nonetheless. Then we had the famous WannaCry, and that made headlines everywhere. I had people, friends of mine, like, but they could be doing anything, not security professionals, you know. I had a teacher friend of mine, Magda, come up to me and say, Anthi, you're not going to believe this. They sent us an email at work today at the school, and they were talking about this new thing. It's ransomware as well. WannaCry? Have you heard of it? I'm like, please, girl. And I said, I don't know. Like, the thing is, I am known for taking really, really long naps, so her question wasn't completely unjustified. But the thing is, what WannaCry has done is it did something spectacular, and it brought information security to, you know, a wider public, and it became dinner table talk. And what does that mean? That means, like, companies now, they really can be seen not trying to do security right or paying attention to it and putting focus on it. At the same time, you have GDPR. There we go. GDPR breaches now can have a huge financial implication for a company. So again, companies really want to do the right thing when it comes to security. They really can't afford to have a breach. So there's more and more companies now trying to get their software programs started or kind of uplift them, do the right thing now. Having effective security, though, at the same time is becoming more and more difficult because, again, you have the prevalence of BYOD. And in some companies, it's not just, you know, I brought my laptop and I hook it up to the network, but I brought my smartphone and I brought my smartwatch. And the thing is, the risk is really, really high, and that in conjunction with both poor and poorly enforced policies, it can be a disaster. And this isn't speculative talk at all. I have a recent example. I'm doing a little bit of freelance work, and I was in an organization where there was a lady, and she went to her IT help desk and she said, all these things are popping up on my laptop, I don't know what's going on. So IT help desk picked it up and obviously saw there was something wrong with it. I go in, have a look. Having looked at all firewall logs and all sorts, you realize there was malware, there was command and control traffic. I was like, what did you do? And she was like, well, my kids wanted to watch Harry Potter. And, you know, the screen on my phone was very small. I don't have a laptop. So I used it to download uTorrent. Now, this lady doesn't even know how to use, Word or Excel. She somehow managed to get uTorrent and get all that stuff downloaded on her laptop, but that's another story. The thing is, it wreaked havoc. It could have been prevented had there been good policies there, but she was able to hook it up to her own Wi-Fi network, straight on, nothing else needed, problem obviously. Right, so more and more companies are trying to do the right thing, so more and more security professionals are needed. So we're in demand now, right? We're at the top there, everybody wants us. So all high demand, great, but I live in Ireland, as I said. I keep getting messages from recruiters and they're asking for somebody to fill a position in the UK, the Netherlands, there's been Belgium, there's been Germany, there's been France. And that was a bit tempting because I was thinking I could be playing beach volleyball in the south of France, but anyway. So yeah, obviously for them to reach out to me when I live in Ireland, they're really hard to find, the security professionals. They're trying to get in touch with me. Now, why is it that it's so difficult to find a good security professional? Well, demand is high, and both you and I know money is good, right? Let's not kid ourselves, money is good. So why not, quit doing what I'm doing, say I'm a network engineer, or a system access management admin, I do something that has to do with some sort of IT discipline, why not jump on the security bandwagon and get some more dough? Like, nobody's gonna know, nobody's gonna know. How do I get hired? Well, this is how you get hired. Management love to hear their buzzwords. So you have blue sky thinking, synergy, cybersecurity, which is just something, a term that I don't particularly like, so I put it on there. I think there's going to be a difference of opinions in this room, but there you go. Low-hanging fruit, and I'm guilty of using that myself a lot, so don't feel guilty if you use this or any of the others. And last but not least, touch base. And I know this isn't business specific, but it really annoys me and I had to get it in there, okay? So, you use this. Management, a lot of the time, depending on the organization, they interview you, they really don't know about security, but they're the hiring manager, they have to do the interviewing. They hear these lovely buzzwords like, ah yeah, she knows what she's talking about, let's hire her. So you're in. And yeah, that's fine, fair play, you have these guys, they move from another discipline to IT security. To be fair, the majority of the people who make this jump, they have a genuine interest in security, they want to do the right thing. Great, we need more people like that. A lot of them are good professionals, so they have good work ethics, they have principles, they know their strengths, they know their limitations, but then you still have this one small percentage, and they're the person who is overconfident and is arrogant and thinks they know everything. It's the person that I was when I finished university. As I said, I'm moving houses, and so I went into my shed, and there was a box that has been sitting there since about 2006. And I found a big stack of papers. It was CVs that I printed when I finished my master's degree, and I was looking for my first security job. At the very top, I said, I am proficient in all manners of IT security. Me, 23-year-old me. I knew nothing. I had no idea what I didn't know. That's what I put on my CV. No wonder it took me so long to get a job. But so this is the guy. There's people who do that. They're a problem. They can cause major problems to organizations. And for the first part of this talk, we'll discuss the pitfalls of this cybersecurity guru. And again, for the purposes of this talk, we'll call him Adam. And this is Adam. Adam doesn't know security, okay? Just remember this. Right, so, Homer Simpson, reading about GDPR. Okay, GDPR, big talk about this in the last while. Who here works in a company where there's been a big project about GDPR, say between the start of the year and the 25th of May? Show of hands. give you some candy, because you did well to survive this. Well done. Right, was it a big panic? Was everybody in big panic, especially in management? Because where I worked, it was, you have no idea what was going on in there. And, you know, you're probably saying to me, you know, GDPR is a good thing. Why is this a problem? And, you know, it's not. It's not at all. It's great. It's a piece of legislation that is holding companies accountable for how they should be treating sensitive data. And that's really good. But it doesn't always work out. So I was on the Lewis, which is Irish for tram. So I was on the Lewis and I was holding my phone. And it went off. Somebody rang me, but it was literally like a split second. But I saw it was a Dublin number. And okay, it's a Dublin number, but I'm not going to ring it back straight away. So I Googled it. And I realized it's from a customer service desk for Air, which is kind of an Irish equivalent of Virgin Media or UPC, you know, that kind of thing. Now, I've never given them consent to contact me by phone, so only because I'm socially awkward and I don't like speaking on the phone, so I always make absolutely certain I just check the box for email. So it's like, why are these guys ringing me? I'm getting annoyed now because, you know, as a security person, I'm a bit pedantic like that. So I had nothing better to do while I was on the tram, so I decided I'll send them an email and complain about the fact that they, not only did they try to ring me when I told them they can ring me, it was just shoddy customer service, like, you know, just to keep the stats up, ring you for half a second so they can put an extra call on their list, you know. So that annoyed me, so I sent them an email, and I got a reply back, and they were saying that in order to investigate my complaint, I had to give them my full name, my home address, my account number, my date of birth, my mobile phone, and a couple more things like the, you know, my last bill, the exact amount, something like that. And underneath it, this is to ensure that we protect the confidentiality of your data. So again, pedantic security person was like, why are they asking this? I don't want to discuss my account. I don't want to do any of this. I just made a complaint. I want somebody to look at it. Why are they asking me? So I emailed them back and I said, well, this is a bit of an oxymoron. You want to protect the confidentiality of my personal data, but you're asking me to send it to you over email. You know, is there something else? Is there another set of questions I can answer? Anything? They replied back quoting the GDPR. So what happened there? Adam was called in for one of these GDPR projects, and he said, no problem, guys, I got it all under control. Adam probably set up a new GDPR policy. It made its way into the complaints department, and now I'm patiently waiting for a reply from their DPO 9 days later. What should have happened is GDPR is good. It's common sense. Protect the confidentiality of the data, but make it in a manner that makes sense. What should have happened is Adam should have looked at all of the company's relevant policies and procedures and incorporate protection controls and security measures in those, rather than just create a separate document just to cover his own ass. And this is what happened. So, you know, Adam didn't do well there, and I'm just waiting to hear back and see what their DPO has to say. It should be interesting. Okay. You probably can guess where this one is going, maybe not. It's the overconfident professional who is lacking the holistic security understanding. And unfortunately, it's not too uncommon a sight. I was actually recently talking to somebody very close to me, and that person works at an Irish consultancy company. And they were telling me about their colleague who was bragging about having made a really big sale. They sold a full-blown PCI DSS package to this company. You know, auditing, consultancy, the pen testing for it, the works. This company doesn't handle credit card data. Like zero contact. Okay, you're probably thinking, well, it's their own fault, they signed up to this, but you know what? That person was put, they were put in a position of authority because they have certain skills and certain expertise, and they didn't do the right thing, and that's bad. Now, you know, it is a problem, and it's not all bad, because really to comply with the PCI DSS standard, you know, it still gives a certain level of security and a certain level of protection, and that's fine. But just proposing the same solution to every organization and for every problem isn't doing the right thing. It could be anything. It could be like a set of standards. So you're selling, any company you go to as a consultant, you're selling them CAC 20. You have to do CAC 20. It might not be the right thing for them. Or it could be a tool. Oh yeah, you gotta use Splunk, and you know, we'll just throw it in there, log everything, and then nobody has any chance of ever monitoring what's coming out of it. So that's basically rendering it useless and pointless. Or the guy who sells the PCI DSS package to a company that doesn't handle card data. But anyway, solutions need to be appropriate, and otherwise the tools can be left misconfigured, and anyway, it can leave the company in a really poor state. So again, that's something Adam does wrong, and keep an eye out for it. The one-trick pony. Okay, pitfall number 3. There's nothing on the screen, because that's the next slide. Okay, is there anybody here who is doing either security design, architecture, or is maybe on the other side of the fence, and they're doing assessment? Buddy, you're too far at the back. You can come get it after. Right. I hope you're not Adam, because you know, there's some things that are really scary, and you know, we're not perfect. We're humans, and we'll make mistakes, and you know, we'll have an off day, or we're going to have a brain fart, or something will happen. But there's a person who does things the wrong way continuously and consciously, and that is the worst kind and the most dangerous kind of security professional. Now, say Adam is at a security design meeting, or a solution assessment meeting, something like that, for solution X. Now, he hasn't been given any documentation. He's basically going in blind, but his boss says, come on, we can't be seen as the blocker. Please just, you know, please go in there and sort it out in the meeting. So Adam goes, and the technical team are talking about their design, and it's a design that uses message queues. They're looking at the particular connection, and Adam says, well, just looking at this, it doesn't quite fit with our security architecture. Why is it that node A initiates the transfer doing a push and not node B doing a pull, and that's going to, you know, meet our principles? And the answer is, well, you know, that's not how MQ works. And Adam says, okay, and moves on to the next component, and you basically now have a design that breaches his company's security architecture and principle, and that's a problem. Or you could have a meeting with the administrators who say, well, I need a direct SSH connection to server A. And Adam says, okay, but you know, we have a jump box just there, and it's there for this particular purpose. Can you not use that? And the sysadmin says, no, because I won't be able to do the stuff that I want to do. Now, if you hear that and you don't ask any more questions, you just say, okay, agree with it, and move on, you're the problem. And, you know, unfortunately it happens way too often. Like, people don't have the confidence in saying, well, you know what, I don't understand how this works. The thing is, you know, we're not DBAs, we're not developers, we're not supposed to know how each and every technology works day to day. They're specialists and they're supposed to know. But the thing is, as a security professionals, you really need to be technical enough to understand You ask the question, you sit down, and they talk to you. You need to be able to understand, and then you need to be able to understand the impact this particular solution and how it works has on security. By the way, does anybody recognize the movie the second photo is from? Anna, well done. Right, good job. I'm just looking around to see, can I lip read anybody say, what's wrong with encryption? Why is this up there? Well, there's nothing wrong with encryption. We love encryption, but sometimes it's just not appropriate, or it's not the right type of appropriate. So say you're the business owner of an application that uses a server to store healthcare data. Really, really, really sensitive information, okay? And obviously you want that data protected. So you ring Adam, your friendly neighborhood cybersecurity guru, and you say, Adam, here's that server, really important stuff in there. What do we do? Adam says, I got it. Don't you worry. We'll encrypt it. I'll put full disk encryption on it. Now, that sounds great to the business owner. I see some head shaking. Yes, what is the problem with Adam's solution? Obviously, put an FD on the server really protects from one or two scenarios. Either the hard drive is damaged accidentally or otherwise, or somebody has managed to bypass all the physical controls of the data center, gained access to your rack, took out the hard drive, put it under their arm, and made a break for it with it. It doesn't really stop the DBA from having access to the files in there. It doesn't stop the sysadmin who has access to the server for admin reasons. It doesn't stop any of that unless other controls are put in place. So, yeah, when you talk about encryption, there's a few other things that you need to keep in mind. Obviously, the sensitivity of the data, but also its lifetime, because what is the point of implementing 2048-bit encryption for something that has a lifetime of 10 minutes? Like, you have to think about the length a successful brute force attempt is going to take and the lifetime of your data, and make an appropriate decision there. Now, encryption is expensive. Probably the executives here know that better than anybody else, the ones with the budget. Sometimes it is also slow, and just sometimes it's just not necessary. Like GDPR, again, the knee-jerk reaction was encrypt everything. Encrypt everything and we'll comply, because that's what matters. But there's always alternatives. So when you're thinking about protecting confidentiality of your data, you kind of have to think the different use cases, what it is you're exactly trying to achieve, and think about alternatives like anonymization or your tokenization, pseudonymization, and yeah, basically when you're dealing with confidentiality of data, you kind of have to get out of the encryption box, keep an open mind, and don't do what Adam does. Adam doesn't know security. Okay, right. So next, we looked at the pitfalls of the security professional, and now it's time we're going to look at some of the good building blocks. Now, GRC is seen as the dull cousin of security. It's not sexy. Nobody really wants to say they're doing it, but they kind of have to. The truth is, it's really important, and there is a skill in doing it right, because it's right in documentation. Not everybody's good at it. So your documentation can be your policy. So you put in a position in your organization where you either have to build up your policies from scratch, or they're really, really bad and you kind of have to do something about it. So, okay, policies, it sounds really, really ominous a task, but really, you know, there's templates out there. I now work in Cork. I think it's the same version. It's different versions of the same document going around Cork in the different companies. You know, somebody started using one template and then they moved from organization to organization. You have the same document everywhere, just looking slightly different. But templates are good. Like, somebody else has done all the dirty work, and they're not all bad, but, you know, have a look at them. Don't just copy paste. You know your organization better than anybody else. You know what's important. Modify what's there. Don't start from scratch. There is absolutely no need for it. Also, policies. They should be the law. I've been to a lot of companies where I came across an ETP, or exception to policy. And that is a bugbear of mine, because there really should be no such thing. It's like saying murder is outlawed, but we'll allow Greg to do it for the next 6 months, and that's okay. Now, Greg can be a bit dodgy, so, you know, it's not a good thing. And if it's not good for murder, you know, it's not good for a policy. So policy is law. Please remember this. There is no such thing as exception to policy. Now, standards is a different thing. They're more technically prescriptive, and you can get an exception to them. The beautiful ETS, exception to standard. So standards, they're technical, and you have to develop them, but you really need to understand the vulnerability point. So say you're trying to put together a standard for service accounts in your organization. You kind of have to understand what is it that makes service accounts a target. And, you know, a service account is, you know, it's privileged. It's a powerful account, so this is why people try to get to them. So what can you do? You want to write a standard. Where do you start? Okay, you understand they're a target for this particular reason. Now, what can I do? You know, there's a few things you can start off with. You can limit a service account to just the one server. Don't use the same one for like 10 or 20 servers. Compromising one, compromise the other. You know, free game for the attacker. You can, depending again on your policies, but you know, maybe you can have a preference for the local service account, unless the service account has to have access to other servers, so obviously you need that to be a domain account. Strong password complexity, really basic stuff, but you know, don't get caught up in things that are common. You might be thinking, but there's this project they're doing now, it's going to bring this new tool, it's going to be generating the passwords automatically. That project might never materialize. Write the basics down in your standard, pick your password complexity, and just get on with it. I like that. Have them ring you again. Now, service accounts, they could be anything. So maybe you have a SQL or an Oracle service account, and what's different there is that maybe the password for that has to be hard-coded into an application or into a server, but you know, you can't have it sitting there. Have your standard say that password can stay where it is, it's encrypted, and the key encryption key has to be somewhere else sorted. Basically, loads of types of accounts, and if any of you are in banking, the good old mainframe, there's no getting away from it. So basically, have a think about what it is you're trying to protect, and find the different attack vectors. Just write something down, and that's it. Same for the tech spec documents. You know, again, plenty of templates, STIG, very popular. Like, you know, if it's good enough for the United States Department of Defense, it's probably good enough for other organizations. But again, you know, review it, validate, modify. You might have to go through every single line of registry key after registry key. Google is your friend. All the information is out there. It just takes time. Right, so policies and standards. Where can we go next? Security architecture, as being done in companies right now. Traditionally, this is traditional security architecture, to the pain of security and technical teams. Security usually gets bolted on, added on to a design, because the change is like urgent. We have to do this right now, and we need the security controls to be in there, but they have to be ad hoc in order to meet the requirements of this particular change. There's budget constraints, there's short timelines, it's what you usually quoted as a reason for something being urgent. And you basically don't get an opportunity for a more holistic approach. It would suit the needs of the organization long term, but no time for that. So what happens is you end up with this, which is a mismatch of processes, tools, and they're really, really difficult to monitor. I'm sure a lot of you are in environments just like that, and I really feel for you. We're pretty much all in the same boat, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Now, security architecture will be the cornerstone of any subsequent projects that go ahead in your organization. Whether that's cloud or on-prem, obviously a few differences here and there, but basically the principles are the same. And you get this right first time, or as close to right as possible, and it's going to make your life easy, and it's going to allow for a more stable and more secure estate, and changes can happen quickly, and they don't necessarily have a huge adverse effect or either performance or functionality. But where do you begin? You have to define your scope, and this is my idea of collaboration, and also I like South Park, so two birds in one stone. So you need to define the scope of your security architecture. It's everything. It's everything. It is your infrastructure, all phases of it, all phases of design, all phases of implementation, all phases of operation. And bear in mind, where you have CI/CD, you have to pay particular attention, because there you have code as infrastructure, and that can be very dangerous in itself. The security architecture will apply to the applications and the solution, and again, it's going to be all phases of the design and implementation and operation. It's going to apply to your business controls and operational procedures. Say you have a business unit. It's my job to do something with, say, card data. I have to send it to my teammate. I have to email, the long code of a card. It's an operational process, but it's no less significant. We still have to put a control in there to protect the card data. Environments. Your security architecture should apply to all environments. Doesn't matter what you call it in your organization. Dev tests, you can have your immediate framework, migration, integration, whatever you call it. It's in scope. It's always in scope. And dev environment is very important, because it's where changes to the network and the infrastructure take place, and there's a lot of innovation going on in there, but it's also where a lot of the security vulnerabilities get exposed. Intentionally or unintentionally, it's prime ground for something like this. But the thing is, there is always a way to secure your dev or any other environment, and you can keep innovation going, you can keep the schedules, you keep the developers happy, and then, just work with them. Work with the teams. You have to understand how they work, how the processes work, and then trying to embed your controls in there in as seamless as possible a way. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of resistance, and I'm sure a lot of you have already been through that. Okay, so you have a scope. Now what? You have your business requirements and your enterprise architecture. Now, business requirements is probably something that a lot of people forget about, but we have to remember security is there to enable the business. Like, there is no point me having the, implementing great security controls, and, the environment is so slow, it's so difficult, everything takes a long time, the business fails. It's not going to work. You have to remember about the business. You are there to enable the business. You're not there to do security for the sake of security. Your enterprise architecture is another contributing factor, and your security architecture really should be aligning to the enterprise architecture. Now, it may be difficult for you to get any documentation, especially if your company isn't known for doing good documentation, but ask for it. You might get something. I use chocolate and peanut butter cookies as a bribe. It works. Try something. Okay, so you have the business side of things. You got all you can out of them, and now you get to what is it you have to consider. What are the factors you have to weigh in that are going to define your security architecture, which is where you have, it's under your control. You're defining it, you're designing it, it's your baby. So you have your laws and regulations. So you have things like, again, GDPR, you have HIPAA, you have PCI DSS, you have SOX. There's a lot of things that you need to consider, and they depend on the nature of your business, but also where your company operates. Then you have your standards and maybe certifications. You have your ISOs, you have your SOC 2, you have NIST. Your company might have an affiliation with a program and they have to be certified for that. And you have to take that into consideration, as well as your information security management system, your ISMS. Now, ideally, your ISMS is already aligning to your certifications and your standards and all that, because it is the full set of your policies, standards, and your physical and logical controls. But if it's not, maybe it's time you have a look at your ISMS and modify it to align with your standards. Now, a lot of these are going to dictate your security architecture framework. The loads out there, you could probably go to a 3-day conference and still there is going to be no consensus on what is the best. But loads to choose from. There's SABSA, there's TOGAF, there's DODAF, there's SACMAN, there's loads out there. Now, they're great, open security architecture frameworks, but really, despite them being kind of tried and tested, and they're there for a reason, people use them for a reason, but what are they doing really? They're just giving you a vision, and they're a guideline on how you're going to plan and design your security architecture. You don't really need one of those frameworks. A bit of exposure in different security principles and positions, a good head on your shoulders, keeping security in mind, just having a little bit of common sense and spending loads and loads of hours online and doing research, probably going to give you the same result. They're there for a reason, but they're not the must-have. Not using an open security architecture framework does not mean that your security architecture isn't going to be successful. Now, principles of the security architecture. This isn't the law, okay? This is just my opinions. It's a few things that I've used over the years. I think they're just sound building blocks. And they can really give you a place to start from if you're doing security architecture in your organization instead of starting from scratch, because you'd be surprised if you're not using a security architecture framework. There's very little information out there on where to start. So, security and privacy, don't forget GDPR, security and privacy by design. So, like all of them, I think they're all pretty self-explanatory, but security and privacy, they really shouldn't be an afterthought. They, this should be your overarching principle. Without this, you're going to get nowhere. Trying to design your controls, after you've assessed the solution, you're trying to assess the impact that it has on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data. And you then have to try and design the controls as close to the source as possible, and also where they can be monitored. And now, why is this important? knowing where the evidence of the control is and knowing how to get to it is going to make your life so much easier when an auditor comes along. Trust me. If you're doing security architecture, take the extra time and write down where you're evidencing every single one of your security controls. It's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. Security controls appropriate to the risk. As I said, we're not here to do security for the sake of security. So security controls should be appropriate to the risk that they're trying to either mitigate or reduce. Risk reduction, again, should also be balanced against the total cost of the control, but also for any reduced operational effectiveness and flexibility. Secure SDLC. We had a chat here before we started. Who here uses code analysis tools where they work? Static, dynamic, anything else? You guys are getting all the candy. I'll get you after. Right, I don't know, is it working well where you are? Are the developers, you know, trying to get away from doing it? Is it working well where you are? All good? You? All good. Good stuff. We're just starting that where I'm working, so I'm really curious to see how it all pans out. I might have a chat with you after. Okay, so SDLC, your security development lifecycle. Best practice in the development of systems is vital to the integrity of a solution. Like, you have data being processed, and if an application is in an unmanaged environment, in an environment that isn't secure, then you really can't guarantee the reliability of the original data, but also of the process data, the results you get out of the application. So, very important. Ensure the development environment is maintained, and is maintained not only from a change perspective, but also from attacks from malicious software. Now, I was tempted to put in a really big picture of Anne Robinson up here for this one, but I thought it was going to ruin the aesthetics of the rest of the group, so I left it as is. Right, the easiest way into a system, a lot of you know, is the least protected part, which is the weakest link. That is what makes other parallel controls pointless. So when you have defense in depth, you have multiple independent controls, and they're complementary, and you have redundant layers, and it's all good. But when you have the weakest link, like here, then there can be multiple ingress points, and not every one of those points is going to have the same level of controls. That makes it the weakest link. Keep an eye out for it. It's your weak point. If somebody tries to get in, this is where they go. So try to identify it and put some mitigating controls on the side if you can. Now this, ensuring accountability. I like this one. Human nature is great. So ensuring accountability is making sure you can prove the identity of an actor who has undertaken a particular action. Now, knowing that this is possible in an environment, it has an effect on its own. Most people, when they know they're being observed, they behave better. So having something like this in your environment and users knowing about it, it makes them less likely to misbehave. But also, if you don't have this control in place, what happens is a user can always just deny the action, and there's no way for you to prove it. Okay. Security standards, we spoke about them. Designing with standards, you know, use your existing standards from your organization. As I mentioned earlier, same with policies and other documents like that, you're avoiding reinventing the wheel. But the plus on this one is twofold. Security standards in an organization are usually signed off, endorsed, accepted by senior management. If you're designing your security architecture and using security standards as part of that, there really is less likely pushback from your technical teams, just because you have the senior management buy-in for that. Your least privilege, again, one of the basics. Processes, users, programs, they really should only be given access to the resources that they need as a minimum in order to perform a function. No more, and why are we doing this? It reduces the likelihood of intentional or unintentional compromise or corruption of the data, and also it gives you some limitation if there is a breach. Defense in depth? No, audit. All right, audit, sorry guys, I'm a slide behind here. Audit significant activities. We just spoke about that. There we go. Sorry about that. Defense in depth. Right, we spoke about this earlier. Providing multiple security features, operating at different levels, using different processes, and also using different technologies. If any of you are working for any of the CMA 9, this won't be news to you, using different technologies. But any security control basically can fail. It can be malicious activity, it can be unexpected circumstances. But anyway, other independent complementary controls can be in place and reduce the damage and can reduce the compromise. And multiple defense mechanisms will reduce the likelihood of an immediate loss or corruption of the data. So good practice, again, put it in there. Like invitation only. My previous boss would say, don't call us, we'll call you. So you have non-interactive connections in your environment pretty much everywhere. And with this principle, what you're doing is you have a level of assurance that I know I'm the high trust zone and I'm initiating the connections. I always know who's coming in. I'm the boss. Now, a few more of these. I'm nearly done. I'm not going to rush through these because I don't think I'm running out of time. Right, okay. Simplify and standardize. Right, I'll be quick. A simple environment is easier to manage. Less complexity means an environment that is easier to maintain. It's easier to do upgrades. It's easier to do patches. If there is a compromise, it's again easier to find the culprit and mitigate. Mutual authentication, basic concept. You have a connection to a node. You basically have to make sure both sides are who they say they are. Secure recovery. Quite a simple concept, but not followed very often. You have a compromised host. It's taken offline, and then you do a little bit of investigating, and then you put it back online. You're just going to introduce the same vulnerability right back into the environment. Just make sure before you put something back online, its security is sound, and it's a good state. End-to-end technology lifecycle? No, there's something wrong with my slides. Inbound interactive connections. Right. Secure inbound interactive connections. You have no direct connectivity for inbound interactive users. In one of my previous slides, we're talking about the admin who wants to SSH directly into a server. Avoid that if you can. Use a virtual desktop. Use VPN. Use a jump box. Use something. There really should not be direct administrative access into a server. End-to-end technology lifecycle, again basic. Some companies have rules like use a technology when it's at -1 or in -2, whatever works for you, but basically try to avoid something that has a published end-of-life date. You're designing for a project that uses existing components. One of the existing components is already out of support. Make sure that it's part of the responsibilities of that project to uplift and upgrade that component before the whole project goes live. They'll have to bear the cost, but it works for you, so go for it. Inbound interactive high-risk users. This is basically about strong authentication, and again, GDPR, a lot of it is already there, but you have your high-risk business user payments or something like that, so an administrator, make sure you have more than one factor. Strong authentication can be, it can be defined as many different things depending on who you're talking about, so pick something that works for you. Protect the data, that speaks for itself. This is basically what security is at the end of the day. It is all about the protection of its confidentiality, its integrity, its availability. So, it's a good principle to have. And remote log collection. Again, a lot of companies do that. It's not news to anybody, but make sure the log files are away from the system for which they're recording the activity. And that makes you make sure you always have available a forensically sound copy of the log files. You could have a forensic investigation going on or a legal investigation going on. That will make sure that it's there and can be used. Fidelity of environments. In short, make sure the security controls you have in place, they're the same across all environments. This is twofold. It avoids something going into production with lower levels of security, and also it's actually good for application developers as well. An application is configured the same way in all environments. The data always have the same journey through the application. It's a little bit of a pain to set it up, and there is always a bit of resistance, but in the end it does work out. And don't trust, prove. You're designing a system and we say, okay, this is the design, we're going to go into production with it. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it the way we agreed. So there should be another layer of defense. You're doing the design, there should be somebody else there who is assessing what was actually implemented matches the agreed design. Okay, so basically, last one, very important, not usually talked about. People will do a lot for you if you're nice to them. You work in a coffee shop and you have 2 cupcakes left, and one is stale, it's a day old, it's mangy looking, and you have a fresh one. Greg and I walk in, we both want a cupcake. Now, Greg is eccentric. He can be fussy because his cup and saucer aren't from the same set, or his fork has 3 prongs and not 4. He's a pain. I walk in with him, I'm a ray of sunshine, I tip well. Who's going to get the good cupcake? I'm going to get the good cupcake. People respond to somebody who's nice to them. Have you not worked at the help desk and you had 2 tickets and one was going to take a long time, but it was from somebody who was nice to you, and the other one was a quick fix, but that person was cranky AF. Who are you going to go to first? Attitude is really important. It gets you a lot of buy-in, and people will hear you out if you're nice to them. So that is it. Apparently there is no time for questions, but you can catch me at the bar later on if you want. Okay? Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.